China's weightlifting system is almost alien. Seriously, no one can copy it, and no one wants to. Look at Chinese Olympic champion Liu Xiaojun, dead silent. Then he slides. His feet barely leave the wood. He just flawlessly lifted 374 pounds over his head to win Olympic gold. Now compare him to his average American competition. Veins popping, screaming, stomping the floor like a complete maniac. This is the kind of energy, that raw unga-bunga brute strength you probably think of when you think of weightlifting. But you are completely wrong. The Chinese weightlifting system is built on physics. Their team literally calculates champions. Long before a kid ever touches a barbell, state scouts measure their skeleton. They hunt for a highly specific, genetically optimized bone structure, short femurs, long torsos. And if a kid's tibia is more than 4 centimeters longer than their femur, they get sent home. China literally turns the human body into a leveraged physics machine. But this is just the start. It turns out, to dominate the globe, China's broken just about every single rule you know about getting strong. For decades, the weightlifting world worshipped one super intense training style. They called it the Bulgarian system. A coach named Ivan Abadjev built this brutal routine back in the 1970s. He was basically a weightlifting supervillain. His athletes trained up to 6 times a single day. They only lifted their absolute heaviest weights. Every single lift was 100% maximum effort. The logic was actually pretty simple. If you force the human body to lift crushing weights daily, it adapts. It either gets insanely strong or it completely breaks down. Western lifters copied this exact method for years. They screamed at the top of their lungs before lifting. They slapped each other in the face like they owed each other money. They relied entirely on pure rage to move the bar. This brute force method definitely won some gold medals, but it also broke a massive amount of athletes. Lifters suffered from extreme physical burnout. Their careers ended super early because their bodies just rage quit. The Chinese national team actually tried this max-out system in the 1990s. They watched their own lifters fall apart. They quickly realized this screaming method was a biological dead end. Pure rage doesn't build long-term dominance. It just builds a fast track to physical therapy. So the Chinese coaches threw the meathead playbook in the trash. They realized something important. To beat the biggest, angriest lifters on earth, they didn't need more muscle. They just needed a tape measure and a physics-optimized bone structure. Let's talk about those bones. If you want to build the ultimate weightlifter, you don't start in the gym, you start in rural elementary schools. Long before a Chinese athlete ever touches a barbell, national scouts travel the country. They test thousands of young kids, but they aren't looking for kids who are already jacked. They are looking for kids with very specific, almost freakish body proportions, specifically short thigh bones and a long torso. In fact, the scouts use a strict mathematical rule. If a kid's shin bone is more than 4 centimeters longer than their thigh bone, straight to jail. Obviously, I'm joking, but they are instantly cut from the program. Why are they so obsessed with short thigh bones? Leverage. Holding something heavy close to your chest is pretty easy. But try holding even a bag of groceries way out in front of you, and suddenly your muscles are screaming. That distance between your spine and the weight is what you want to reduce. When you squat down with 400 pounds, your hips act like a hinge. If you have long thigh bones, your hips have to shoot way far back behind you. Now it takes way more energy just to remain balanced. You have to use pure brute strength just to keep your spine from snapping like a twig. So, the Chinese system basically creates a biological cheat code. Find a kid with exceptionally short femurs and their hips don't travel as far back. With short thighs, the lifter can keep their chest perfectly straight up and down. The heavy barbell stacks neatly right over their feet. So instead of fighting the weight with their fragile lower back, they just use their massive leg muscles to push straight up into the ceiling. They literally shrink the physics equation. They move more weight with way less effort simply because their bones are the right length. But having the right bone structure is only half the battle. As any lifter knows, what you need next is momentum, right? Well, according to the Chinese, wrong. It's time to slide. Having the perfect skeleton gets that massive barbell positioned perfectly, but moving that weight way above your head, catching it before it crushes you, that requires absolute muscular mastery. Western weightlifters absolutely love to stomp. They throw the bar high and jump up into the air. They use momentum to aggressively shift the weight. It sounds terrifying and looks amazing on camera, but physics tells us this is actually a terrible idea. Momentum requires extra energy. Oh, and catching the bar, that requires timing and a whole lot of stabilizer muscles that risk injury every time you twist or turn, even a little off-center. Congratulations, you played yourself. Chinese lifters refuse to jump. They use as little momentum as possible. Instead of jumping with the bar, they slide under it. Their shoes barely skim the platform. By completely disconnecting from the floor, they remove all upward friction. Gravity pulls their body straight down at absolute maximum speed. This sliding technique guarantees the barbell travels in a perfectly straight vertical line. If the bar swings even 1 inch forward, you waste energy trying to save it. Just look at two-time Olympic champion Li Fabin at the Tokyo 2020 Games. During a massive 166 kilogram clean and jerk, his balance shifted slightly. A Western lifter stomping through that mistake would have completely collapsed. Their career would have been over, but Li Fabin was perfectly locked into his vertical physics equation. He casually lifted one leg off the ground. He flexed on the entire world by holding over 360 pounds like a majestic flamingo. Sensors later showed his single planted leg generated over 3,300 newtons of vertical ground force. That is 5.5 times his own body weight. He didn't need a violent stomp or pure adrenaline to save the lift. He just let gravity, biomechanics, and perfect positioning do the heavy lifting. So the Chinese system relies entirely on flawless physics instead of raw muscle. They specifically avoid muscling the weight up, which makes their next training secret incredibly confusing. Because after mastering the math of gravity, they throw all of it out of the window, temporarily. They grab some dumbbells and start training like professional bodybuilders. If you walk into a typical weightlifting gym in America, you will not see people doing bicep curls. Western coaches usually hate traditional bodybuilding as opposed to strength training. They believe that building big, bulky muscles makes an athlete stiff and slow. Western dogma says bodybuilding is strictly for guys trying to look good at the beach. But Chinese Olympic lifters look like literal action figures. Their backs and shoulders are ridiculously massive, and they do not build those muscles just to look good on Instagram. They do it strictly to survive. Think about what happens when you catch 400 pounds dropping out of the sky. A massive, violent shockwave travels straight through your wrists, elbows, and knees. If your bare skeleton takes that hit directly, things snap. Tendons rupture and careers end instantly. So the Chinese team uses a biological concept called sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. To put it simply, they build a literal meat shield. After spending hours doing heavy Olympic lifts, the athletes do not go home. They grab dumbbells and train like Arnold Schwarzenegger. They do heavy bicep curls, lateral raises, and lat pull-downs. The official Chinese training database actually tracks 344 specialized bodybuilding exercises. They are actively building a thick muscular shelf around their most fragile joints. This is literal joint armor. The thick muscle tissue absorbs the violent impact of the heavy barbell. It protects their ligaments from terrifying shear forces. It builds the stabilizer muscles that are most prone to injury due to underuse. This armor is the exact reason a legend like Liu Xiaojun could win Olympic gold in Tokyo at 37 years old. In a sport that routinely destroys human knees by age 25, his muscle armor made him basically immortal. Now, common sense says if you build a completely bulletproof human, you should push them to their absolute limits. You should load up the bar and watch them smash world records in the gym every single day. But the Chinese coaches do the exact opposite. In fact, their biggest secret isn't about what they lift, it is about what they refuse to lift. In Western gym culture, everything revolves around the 1 rep max. If you aren't grinding, shaking, and vibrating into another dimension, gym bros think you aren't trying. It is the ultimate ego trip. But Chinese Olympic weightlifters almost never lift their maximum weight in practice. These athletes spend their entire lives in the 80 to 85% zone. To an angry Western lifter, this sounds incredibly lazy. Why would the strongest humans on Earth intentionally lift lighter weights? Because struggling is actually a terrible way to learn. Think about it. When you lift 100% of your absolute maximum, your technique breaks down. Your backgrounds, your knees cave in, and you panic. And your brain accidentally memorizes that panic. The Chinese system believes that practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. Sorry, I sound like your middle school gym teacher, but it is true. The entire program operates on a strict 5-word psychological mantra. Close, fast, low, rhythm, stable, close. The bar must shave your shirt to shrink that moment arm. Fast, explode upward to use momentum. Low, slide your feet and drop instantly under the bar. Rhythm, connect the pull and the catch so it looks like a dance. Stable, use your massive muscle armor to freeze the weight in midair. Coaches and lifters obsess over these 5 words. The squad lifts 85% of their maximum weight over and over and over again. This repetition permanently burns flawless perfection into their nervous system without getting tired. There is zero ego involved. Take the legendary Chinese coach Yu Jie. His star athlete, Liao Hui, completely failed at a massive national competition. A Western coach might have screamed at him to try harder. Other trainers might have claimed he lacked heart or willpower. Coach Yu Jie didn't yell. He sat Liao Hui down and looked over the match tape. He treated the failure as just a tiny technical glitch. The duo went back to lifting sub-maximal weights. Master and student fixed the mechanical glitch without any emotion or rage. Liao Hui went on to become an Olympic champion and a world record holder. By refusing to max out every day, the Chinese team protects their bodies and their brains. So when Olympic competition day finally arrives, the world record weight doesn't feel like a life or death struggle. It just feels like a slightly heavier version of the exact same flawless dance practiced 10,000 times. So the next time you watch an Olympic weightlifting competition and you see a massive guy screaming and stomping the platform to hype himself up, just remember what is actually happening. He is fighting gravity with pure, exhausting rage. But when the Chinese national team steps up to the bar, they aren't fighting anything. Nobody in this program views the heavy barbell as an enemy to conquer. Instead, the movement is a perfect calculation, a dance to be mastered. And that is exactly why raw unga bunga brute strength will always lose to simple math.